So the importance of data protection has grown over the years because we're constantly connecting digitally. And so with the increased connectivity online, that will come with certain privacy and security risks that I don't think companies or, individuals can ignore. So I'm not sure if you've seen, I think if no one has seen it, they've been under a rock, the recent Jam COVID data breach that we've seen, the Jam COVID platform. Companies no longer can say, oh, well, I'm unaffected because I'm located in Jamaica. The nature of data is that it is borderless, it moves across the world. And if a company wants to have, customers across the world, the data is going to move, across the world as well. So, you know, those are some of the implications, that's what's happening in the world. And that's why it's important because we're connected, companies are looking to branch out, process data of other people. So it's becoming more and more important to focus on data protection.
Welcome to Tech Talk. My name is Ruth Ann Samuels, the Business Development and Project Management Associate here at Niritech Digital Services, a software consultancy agency where we develop and maintain custom digital solutions. Each month, we talk with various professionals in the technology industry and share valuable information geared towards enhancing your organization's digital transformation and evolution. Please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell below to ensure that you never miss an episode. Through technological advancements, it's becoming easier for us to share information about ourselves, to conduct daily tasks, and to interact with others. Evidently, the sharing of personal data comes with many benefits. However, it is not devoid of numerous risks. Today, we'll be talking with Ms. Shaista Peart, Jamaica data governance and privacy professional, on the topic of data privacy. Thanks for being here with us again, Shaista.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to have you. So congratulations on your accomplishments thus far. You are a certified information privacy professional and you're passionate about data protection. So could you tell us about what motivated you to pursue a career in this field?
Right. Okay. So my journey started as an internship, and the name of the internship is quite quirky. It's a healthcare technology cooperative. At the time, I didn't know what that meant, but I was going for it. It sounded interesting. So what that was, it was focusing on research. So it was a research team, it was a research role focusing on medical technology. And that was quite interesting to me because it was looking at helping patients, helping doctors, health professionals to better diagnose patients and to kind of give back a certain amount of independence and autonomy to patients as well, suffering with very strange or weird diseases that haven't been really explored. So I did an internship in that, and we were working with some really interesting technology, developing new, ways of treating patients. And that came with a lot of data. So we were dealing with a lot of data. So data to improve the systems and also data to use for research purposes. And one day, so a couple ladies walked in and I was like, who are these people? And they said they're from the governance team. And they said, with all the data that we're processing, we have to make sure, even though we're doing a good thing, that it's processed in a way that is lawful, but also respectful of people's data. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And that's how I got introduced to data protection law. I went over to their department for a day, learned a little bit about what they do from a compliance standpoint. And ever since, I've just been in data protection. So that's how it really started.
Okay, that seems like an interesting journey so far.
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. It wasn't something that, so I do have a passion for med technology in particular and how it can really help, but also on the other hand, how we can use this, because med technology creates a lot of data. So how can we ensure that the data that we're using is being used lawfully, but also respecting the privacy of people as well. We're not too invasive with what we're doing.
Yes. Yes, and that's very important. Thank you for sharing how you were inspired to go into the field of data protection. Could you elaborate on your work? Tell us more about your work and some lessons that you've learned so far in the industry.
Sure. So generally, my job entails a lot of reading because technology is constantly evolving. So naturally, new privacy and data protection implications come about because of that. So for me, my job entails balancing between ensuring companies can comply with their data protection obligations, but at the same time, not stymieing business growth, right? So that can be
Okay.
quite tedious sometimes.
Yes.
So I have to try to figure out that balance. But over time, you learn from your experiences and so forth. I think one of the things that I've learned about data protection in particular is that it's not supposed to be looked at as a hindrance, because I think a lot of persons think that, oh, it's a law, it's supposed to tell you what not to do. But data
Yes.
protection really can help organizations process data more effectively, use data more effectively, build more relationships with their stakeholders, whether it is investors, whether it is the direct customers that they're working with. Because if customers see that you put a process in place, or have a culture rather, that shows that you care about their data, you care about their privacy, they're more likely to have a better trust with you, build a better, trusting relationship with you. So
Yes, I
I
agree.
think one of the things I've learned with data protection is that it's not a hindrance. It's just saying, when you're using data, use it responsibly, be respectful, understand that it's a responsibility bestowed upon you the moment you get that data.
Yes, and I think that is very, very important. And
Yes.
here at Niritech Digital Services, many of our clients collect user information, whether it be on a website or online platform. So, how important is data privacy, and how can we ensure that our clients protect their information shared by the users?
Okay, so the importance of data protection has grown over the years because we're constantly connecting digitally. So we're connecting to do business, we're connecting to shop online, we're connecting to socialize, we're entertaining
Everywhere,
ourselves with Netflix, all that
everything.
jazz. And so with the increased connectivity online, that will come with certain privacy and security risks that I don't think companies or, individuals can ignore. So I'm not sure if you've seen, I think if no one has seen it, they've been under a rock, the recent Jam COVID data breach that we've seen, the Jam COVID platform. And it's been getting a lot of attention. The government essentially, there was data sitting, for persons to be able to access publicly. And this was data of lots of persons who traveled into the country. It involved their names, their passports, COVID-19 test lab results,
Wow.
really serious information that, if when you put those information sets together, can really create a profile of someone to maybe use for identity theft, scamming, or to just use nefariously against those persons. So
Yes.
companies no longer can say, oh, well, I'm unaffected because I'm located in Jamaica. The nature of data is that it is borderless, it moves across the world. And if a company wants to have, customers across the world, the data is going to move, across the world as well. So, you know, those are some of the implications, that's what's happening in the world. And that's why it's important, because we're connected, companies are looking to branch out, process data of other people. So it's becoming more and more important to focus on data protection. And I think the implications are huge. Large fines are there, business costs, whether it is
Yes.
to pay a company to come and investigate how the breach occurred. You can have loss of business, customers no longer want to use your services or your products because they can't trust you, and that reputational damage as well. So it's a big thing. It's important, and it's not something that we can be turned a blind eye to at this point in time. Businesses can ensure that they're protecting data by complying with data protection, because as I
Yes.
said earlier, it promotes responsible use of data.
Mm-hmm. And what does that compliance look like?
uh it looks like a lot of things. um it's making sure that you understand what data you have,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you don't understand the data that you have, you won't know what you need to protect, right? It's putting the proper systems in place, the proper processes in place to ensure that the level of risk that you have as an organization, you're putting measures in place to I guess mitigate those
Yes,
risks.
mitigate
So
the risk.
those are what some of the things look like.
Yes, thank you, Shaista. The recently passed Data Protection Act ensures the
Yes.
right of the individual consumer, such as there are so many rights: the rights to be
Yes.
informed, the right to access. So, how applicable is the Data Protection Act, and what steps can our clients take to ensure that they become DPA ready?
Right. Good question. So the Data Protection Act, the Jamaica Data Protection Act, applies to both public and private entities. So it's not just private entities, also public entities who or that process personal data of a living person who can be identified from that data, but also deceased persons. And this is an interesting distinction, because in other territories across the world, it only applies to the personal data of persons who are alive. But Jamaica has taken it a step further to now say it also applies to somebody who has been deceased for less than 30 years. So even
Wow.
a dead person there, we're ensuring that we're protecting their data. So from that, you can see that it's really applicable to a large amount of persons or
Yes, yes.
companies in
Mhm.
Jamaica.
Yes.
So some of the things that they can do to get ready, as as I've mentioned earlier, do an audit to understand what you have, but also to look at the gaps. It's important to understand where you are, what level of compliance you have, right? So that you can now look at what measures need to be put in place to promote, compliance with the act. I think the other thing is to ensure that you're complying with the data protection standards. So there are 8 standards in the Data Protection Act. And if you would like to say they make the foundation of the act. So that would also help as a good foundation for companies looking to comply with the act. I think also
Yes.
conducting what we call data retention and disposal exercises. So that means
Okay.
getting rid of what you don't need, right? So if you don't need the data, it's no longer needed for any form of business activity or any other purposes. Maybe if you need to comply with a particular law, if you no longer need that data, delete it. And I always say, when you have less data, if there's a breach, the breach is less severe, or you won't have to
Yes.
protect what you don't have. So if you don't, the worst thing is to have a breach and the data that was breached, you actually don't use it. So get rid of the data, when you no longer need it.
That's
I
so
think the next thing
important.
is, it is. I think the next thing is to look at your vendors. So the saying goes, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we know with business, a company can't achieve their business objectives all by themselves. They're going to need supportive services from different vendors, as I'm sure, Niritech provides services and supportive services to different companies. So
Yes,
due
we do.
diligence is very key. So if a company is sharing personal data with another company to provide that supportive service for them, it's important for them to ensure that that company is equipped to protect that data as well. So if you have robust systems in place, you're protecting the data, you're ensuring that persons can exercise their rights under the act, you want to ensure that you're working with third-party vendors who do the same. So due diligence is very key, and it's going to be a very robust process. It might take time for larger organizations, but the risk that it brings for not doing your due diligence is very, very dire. So you have to make sure that is something that you focus on.
Yes.
Also, you want to put policies and processes in place. So for example, you mentioned earlier that the data protection affords persons with certain rights. So policies and procedures would help to make these processes run smoothly. So for example, if someone requests their data, access to their data or a copy of their data, policies and processes will help to make that, process more efficient and quicker, because, and especially because there is a 30-day compliance rate. So companies have 30 days to provide. Once someone asks for their data, the company has 30 days to provide that data over to persons. So when you have a proper policy or a process in place, that makes, that activity run a lot smoother. And I think the final thing is to conduct training and awareness. As I said, we're talking off camera. This this act is quite new. It's novel to a lot of persons, both companies and individuals,
Definitely.
of
Yes.
Jamaica. So in organizations, persons are going to need to understand what the legislation is, and more importantly, also what their responsibilities are. So in their everyday functions, how do they protect data? How do they handle data once it comes into their control or into their, they're in contact with them?
Thank you. You made a lot of excellent points, Shaista. I could
Thank you.
ask,
Yes.
so you mentioned that the act is new. How soon do you see the companies in Jamaica ensuring that they're compliant with the Data Protection Act? It's new, so a lot of us are still trying to understand it, as you mentioned. So how soon do you see it becoming, really prevalent in the organizations in our country,
Right.
or compliance
That
to the act? Yes.
that's a good question. So from I guess the standpoint of the act, there's a 2-year transitionary period. I don't think it's been activated just yet because the law hasn't fully been enforced, from my understanding. So companies really should be starting now, to get a head
Yes.
start.
Yeah.
It will take a bit of time. I think it's a cultural change as well, and we know with culture takes time to change. It's embedded in people. It's the norm, it's the way people do things. So I would say companies need to start now, but in any case, when the act becomes fully enforced, people have 2 years, or companies have 2 years grace period or transitionary period to put their measures in place. So I think after that, we'll start seeing companies complying. People will start saying, oh, this is something that we need to take seriously, or even
Yes,
before, but
definitely.
it will be in organizations.
Okay, thank you so much, Shaista. Thank you for participating in our Tech Talk today. We
Sure.
learned so much. I know that organizations and individuals who listen to this talk will have learned so many important points about the Data Protection Act and data
Yes.
protection on a whole. Thank you for the advice. Thank you for the excellent points you made on areas such as training in organizations, doing audits, ensuring that you delete
Yes.
data that you don't use, which
Don't
is
need.
very
I can't
important.
stress that enough. You don't
Yes,
want to have data that you don't need. As I said,
yes,
it's insult to injury when you have a data breach, and then when you actually investigate the breach, you're like, wait, but we don't use this data. Why are we
yes,
getting? It's just too much. So
yes,
for
definitely.
sure, for
Yes, for
sure.
sure. So thank you. And if
You're
I could
welcome.
leave with anything, I think the most important thing, I would say that it's time to start now. It's time to
It's
start
time
now.
to start now. And I
Yes,
think also for persons, not just companies, persons as individuals who, focus on learning more about privacy and data protection. As I said, we're going further and further into the digital stage. We have so many devices that we use, that are connected to the internet or connected to different networks, and they do bring risks. So I think we as individuals as well have to be cognizant and look at, some of the ways that we use technology,
Yes,
what are the
yes.
risks that are there for us as individuals. So it's not just companies assessing the risks, but as individuals, we need to assess the risks as well, and how it potentially can affect us and others as well. So that's
Yes.
also quite important.
Yes. So we have to do our research.
We have to do our
Definitely.
research. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Shaista. It was a pleasure
You're
having
welcome.
you.
Thank
And
you. It was a pleasure
we have,
being here.
yes, thank you so much. And I've learned so much. So,
That's good.
thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for Tech Talk. Um, for persons who are desirous of connecting with you, is there any information that you'd like to share?
Oh, I have LinkedIn. It's just Shaista Peart, my name.
Yes.
But I also, as I mentioned earlier, I want persons to become more aware of their privacy, be more aware of the privacy risks that are associated with digital life. And I have an Instagram page called Two Piece Privacy. And the
Okay.
aim of that is to really break down some of these, complex concepts into digestible ways that persons can understand. It's very relatable. I haven't posted in a while, but I do intend to get back on there. But there's some content on there that persons, can look at and relate to. So it's just aiming to help persons to understand, privacy and
Yes.
data protection. So they
Yes.
can find that page.
Yes. Thank you. So it's two P's for privacy.
Two Piece Privacy. And
Two
it's
P's privacy.
together. So it's number two, Piece Privacy.
Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Shaista. And I think that
You're
platform is
welcome.
very important.
It
Yes.
is, yes.
All
Okay,
right.
thank
So
you. All
thank you
right.
so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.
All
All
right.
right.
Is your website or platform secure or in accordance with the Data Protection Act? Let us help you ensure that your client's information is secured. Give us a call today. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like this video and follow us at We Are Niritech on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.